Hey folks, hello and welcome back to my hypertrophy lifting series where I record as much of my training sessions as I possibly can. This is week 5, day 3. It's a true accessory day, so I'm pretty much hitting shoulders and arms and abs and stuff of that sort, like all the smaller muscle groups that I think that can handle more frequency. And this is actually a day in my very own specialized training program, which I released about 5 weeks ago, and it's titled Myomax. And if you guys want it for yourselves, if you want the actual document, it's $10 in the description down below. But full disclosure, honestly, you do not need to purchase it whatsoever. Because I record everything and I share everything, the only reason why I would recommend buying it is either if you just like what I do and you want to support me, or if you want to be able to record your own sets and reps already in the document. But honestly, all you need is a notepad for that or like Google Sheets or whatever. But anyway, let's just get right into the lift. I'm starting today off with a shoulder compound movement, the machine seated shoulder press. And basically what makes up a shoulder press is anything where you're going to be pressing vertically, because the more vertical you get with your pressing, the more up and down, the more shoulders you're going to be getting just because of the line of press. So if you're like pressing right here, then this is more of a horizontal press and you'd actually be getting more chest and like front deltoid and tricep involved. But the higher up you go, the more the emphasis is shifted up to your shoulder girdle. So actually all the way up here, you're getting like a little bit of upper chest and then primarily side delt and mainly front delt activation and then a little bit of tricep. So that's really like how changing the pressing angle can affect how your body pushes the weight up and which muscle groups it uses. Anyway, I'm going up 10 pounds because last time, if you've been following along, and even if you haven't, I'll just let you know, I hit 190, that's 2 plates on each side plus a 5, because I'm not actually counting the bar, for 8 repetitions for all of the sets, all 3 sets. And I did the same thing the week prior. So I think that it's time to at least test the waters and try and go up a little bit. So I'm going up 10 pounds and we're just going to get as many as we can, because after all, that's all you can really hope for, right? But I'm going to be trying to get 8. All right, so I managed to get 8, and I'm going to review the footage and make sure that my range of motion was adequate. I feel like it was, but part of me thinks I maybe could have gone down a little bit deeper. But honestly, the more heavy it gets, the more challenging it can be to connect that full range of motion. That's just how it goes, right? But I'm going to do everything I can to preserve that full range of motion while still increasing the intensity and achieving progressive overload, because ultimately that's what it's all about. All right, so I reviewed the footage and I think that my range of motion was perfect. I think the reason why I was getting in my head about it is because when you're doing the same variation but with a dumbbell instead, so like the seated dumbbell shoulder press, you have that feedback of, the dumbbell obviously like protrudes widely into a circle. So when you go all the way down, you're at least getting close or touching the dumbbell to your deltoids. And then that's where you kind of know that you've hit that full range of motion and that adequate range of motion. But with something like this, you don't have that feedback of the rubber hitting your shoulder. So it's harder to tell like when you have hit that threshold for adequate depth. But then another thing is I also looked at the document, Myomax, and last week I actually got 9 repetitions per set. And the week before it was 8. So, it's not quite as big as a W as like a win in my book with this previous set, but it still counts for something, since I still increased it by 10 pounds in totality, and then I'm still achieving very close to the same repetition mark. Of course, 8 is not the same as 9, I'm definitely going to try and get 9 now that I'm a little bit more, my body's a little bit more ready to put up the weight, I think. That's another thing is like, I feel like, you know, the further you get into a workout, the more warmed up you're just going to be, the more warm you're going to be. And of course, you could do things prior to starting your first working sets, like warm-up sets, maybe jumping on the treadmill for like 5 minutes, just to get the blood pumping and flowing and stuff. However, with like upper body training sessions, I really feel like you don't need that much. For legs, it's a whole different story. But for something where I'm hitting shoulders and arms, do I really need that much of a warm-up? I don't think so. I think the main thing is just to reduce that injury risk associated with lifting heavy loads by doing a few warm-up sets prior to your working sets. I think that's the main thing. You don't have to go out there and do burpees or run sprints or like do a 20-minute stretching session in order to be adequately warmed up for your lifting sessions. In fact, that's probably just going to eat into how much energy you have for your actual training, which is the last thing you want to do. Okay, set number 2. Oh, shit. Couldn't get 9, unfortunately, but I got close. I almost feel like bringing my hands out a little bit may help, because I find that I kind of get pinched down here when my hands are super close together, but Okay, so last week I got 100 for 8 repetitions for the curls, and then I got 3 cheat reps. This week, I'm just gonna try and beat that. I'm not even gonna try and go up. And the reason for that is because last week was already a jump. So I'm just gonna try and ride it out until I can get a little bit stronger this lift before jumping up to the next weight. And I think that that's something that every lifter should kind of come to terms with, is that progress isn't always going to be super fast. You're not always going to be jumping up 10 or 20 pounds every single time you do an exercise. Just because you're doing it each and every week and you're giving it your all doesn't mean that your body is always going to like hyper respond to lifting. In fact, like after the first couple years, the progress is going to slow down dramatically. You know what I mean? And that's just something that you got to kind of expect and accept almost. Fortunately, we're not like apes or gorillas or something where we're extremely strong. But anyway, it's gonna be first set. Okay, I believe I got 9 there, so I'm definitely pleased with that. And now, if you've been following along, I like to flip around and get some wrist curls in there too for some forearm work. There we go. First set down. And you know, here's my take on the primary benefits between doing a dumbbell curl and doing any sort of bar curl. Well, with a dumbbell, each arm gets to work independently of each other when you're doing it, especially if you're doing it unilateral fashion, so one arm at a time. And therefore, you can move your wrist any which way you want, and move your limb any which way that it's allowed to move. And you can really get that full supination and internal rotation at the top, and then turn it to more of a neutral grip if you want at the bottom to just enact the full function of the biceps and the brachialis. Versus the benefits of a bar, you are fixed into place, which isn't really ideal, but you get that extra stability component, which in spades ultimately, which is a huge plus as well. Ooh. You know, I feel like a lot of people tend to rush through their rest periods on biceps, and their excuse is, oh, biceps are, you know, just one little muscle group, and curls are a single joint movement, so you're not having to recruit as much motor units and stuff to produce force, and a lot of the time you're not doing a lot of weight and all this and that. But if you're really putting a lot of effort and intensity into your lift, like I am with this one, like that's definitely like I reach failure and then some with the cheat reps. You got to be giving yourself enough rest period, guys. Come on. Like I give myself the same amount of rest time as I do on a compound lift like the shoulders. Around like 3 minutes or so is what I'm kind of giving myself. 2 on the low end, probably 3.5 to 4 on like the very tippy top end. And I just think that that's like a good kind of guideline to follow, is the more intensely and more emphasis you're putting on a lift, the more rest period that you should allow your body. And don't just try and be super categorical with your thinking and think, oh, because it's a single joint isolation lift, it doesn't need very much rest time. I think that on average, you probably don't need quite as much rest time, but it really depends on how much you're putting in is how much you should give yourself. So, you know, of course, like a conventional deadlift is gonna need way more rest than a curl, but that doesn't mean that you should shortchange yourself on a curl, is what I'm trying to say. For instance, I just kind of proved my point because by talking to you guys, I gave myself a longer rest time between hitting my bicep curl and then flipping around and doing my wrist curls. And by giving myself that extra time, I managed to squeeze out another 5 repetitions, which is huge. Because in the grand scheme of things, it's all about how much effort and intensity you put in with like smart training is the more you get out. So if you're shortchanging yourself on your rest periods or not going to like as hard as you can on that given day, then you're not going to get as much out of it as you probably hope. Okay, last one. Let's make it count. Okay. Now for the wrist curls. Up next, we're getting into the superset portion of the workout. And I'm starting to love supersets more and more. I just heard about some new research where they basically compared two groups, a straight set group with 2-minute rest times, and then a superset group where they did 2-minute rest times. But obviously a superset is where you do one set and then immediately after do another set, ideally not of the same body part. In fact, it would not, because the superset is a different body part versus a compound set is the same body part. But they did a superset in this case, and what they found was a 40% reduction in the amount of time that people were in the gym. So their gym sessions were way quicker, and they actually ended up getting the same amount of muscle growth and strength gain. So everything else was created equal. So really, you just get a benefit out of this. The only downside is that more advanced people are going to have a harder time, because once you get to a certain point of strength, supersetting isn't really an option anymore, because you need all of your effort for that one set. But for somebody like me, and I'm assuming you, if you're watching this, you can still do supersets to a pretty fair degree. And of course, even when you're advanced, if you're doing like cable stuff, you can still superset it. The only problem that you're gonna have is like supersetting bench press with a row or something like that, right? So anyway, it just makes me more excited about supersets, and I'll definitely continue having them in my training going forward. Well, I'm really happy with that first set, because I've been stuck at around 8 repetitions for a unilateral tricep push down at this weight. So I just added 4, which is huge. In fact, while I was doing that, I got to 8 and I was like, why am I not so fatigued? I was like, I gotta keep going, because I'm not fatigued. Fuck. You know, I'm gonna try adding an attachment because my hands are sweaty. I keep failing by chalk. I think I'm really gonna have to do it soon. Not even sure how many that was, but it was the failure. That's all that matters in my book, because after all, hypertrophy training is an adaptation response. It's not, a sport or something. You don't have to get technically better. Okay, now I'm doing some lateral raises. Here's some additional shoulder training. In the past, I've struggled not to sway my body while doing cable lateral raises. That time I did very well. I feel like there was a very minimal amount of sway, if any at all. And I've been saying that once I get that minimal sway down and I really start like getting stronger at the movement, then I go up in weight. So I think that we may be close to that point, which is awesome. It's always a huge milestone whenever you get stronger at lateral raises. So immediately while I was doing the triceps with the actual bar attachment, I immediately got more repetitions. And I have a hunch for why that is, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct. And what I'm thinking is that you actually have more stability by doing it in this fashion versus when I'm gripping it and my hands are sweaty, I'm struggling my grip. And whenever your grip is struggling, the rest of the lift is going to be struggling as well. So yeah. An underappreciated but also prominent portion of tricep training is actually how your grip position is fixed while you're doing the movement. So if you're using a pronated grip like I am on this lift, you're going to be hitting more of the lateral head of the triceps versus if you're doing more of a supinated grip, then you're going to be hitting more of the long head, the biggest muscle in the triceps. And then a neutral grip, you're going to be hitting a little bit of everything. And I think that that's why that is probably like the most common one in this regard. And then a pronated is second. And you know, it's so like nuanced. Of course, with every grip, you're going to be hitting the whole tricep in its entirety. However, depending on how you rotate your wrist while you're doing it, it's just going to slightly target a different head. And the reason for that is just how you're lined up and how you're pulling or pushing in space. So it also has to do with, you know, if you're higher up like this, how the tricep actually inserts and originates. You're actually going to be hitting more of the long head just because of how it's being tugged. All very nuanced things, and honestly, like, you shouldn't really be worrying about it too much. Like, I don't put much thought into that whatsoever, but sometimes it can be helpful to kind of mix it up and try to target something a little bit different than what you're used to, just for variety's sake and breaking up the, you know, just the predictability of training. It's gonna be the last set of this superset. My triceps are definitely gonna be fried today. Let's get them pretty good. Ooh. You know that you're doing something right when you're sweating profusely. Tends to happen to me on every single lift, especially lower body lifts. I think most of you could agree with that. And in fact, I think that if you're not sweating, then you're probably not training hard enough. Unless you have like a sweat gland issue. Woo. This is almost like a quadruple set, not just a superset, because the superset is typically 2. Tri-set is 3. It's almost like a quadruple. But it's hard to categorize it like that because we're doing 2 exercises. It's just that they're unilateral. So they're double the length. It's almost like 4 sets instead of 2. For the standing unilateral Bayesian cable curl, I actually saw something online which kind of goes with the same idea that I was having, but it was just to a more extreme degree. I made a video a couple weeks back where I stated that the higher up you have the cable machine for the Bayesian cable curls, the more of a deep stretch you'd be getting, because with humeral extension, your humerus going back like this, the further it goes, the deeper stretch you're gonna get in your biceps. I saw a video by Eugene Toe, which actually takes this a step further. He argues that when you just have it up to here, sure, you get a deep stretch, but right here, there's no tension on the bicep. So once you go high up past your normal range of motion, there's always going to be some sort of tension throughout the whole line of curve for the whole set. And I just think that that is brilliant. So I got to give credit where credit is due, raise it up further. And then he was even recommending going down here. I'm not going to do that. That's because I want the stability component. Like, there we go. That's it. Then there, I think even a little bit higher up would be ideal. Let's go like all the way up here. Let's really milk it. And then, you know, sometimes when you make this major of a form modification, you gotta go down and wait just to feel it out. So for today, I'm gonna be going down and wait. There we go. So that's a more constant line of pull. Actually, I kind of like kneeling. I'm actually gonna do it kneeling. Hope you guys can still see this. Wow, that feels incredible. It already felt pretty good. And you know, I had a lot of like friction with kind of liking this movement. I didn't really like it for the longest time, but it's definitely growing on me. The main reason is because I can't do very much weight and I feel there's so much instability with this, just because your arm is totally like out there in space instead of locked into like a bench or something. But that's the beauty of this exercise. Sometimes you want both sides of the coin instead of just the stability component. Something that I noticed that I started doing towards the end there is by the end, I let my arm fully extend back so that it was like I was getting the deepest stretch on the bicep possible, and then almost relax in that position just under that weighted stretch and then initiate. I think that's gonna produce more gains in the long run too. Okay, I'm using a different bar on this one just because I don't have the other bar. Sacrifices had to be made. Holy awkward. The positioning tip on this one as well, I like to not start it from the very bottom because then it takes more effort to get into that starting position. I mentioned this yesterday regarding the barbell mini deadlift, how I usually start it from the ground, so I'm actually having to do a conventional deadlift to get it up. But by starting in a rack, you're just starting from here instead of all the way down here. So you're actually conserving a lot of your energy, which can be used towards the actual lift. Then you can get more out of it. Same logic with this one. You know, the higher up you start it, as long as it's not impairing your range of motion, the easier it's going to be for the rest of the lift, because the more effort you're going to have saved up versus expending in the beginning just to get the bar up. You know what I mean? I think I'm good for set 2. Yeah, I can definitely feel that working. I'd strongly recommend, hey, you know, this is a new movement for me. This is a new, well, it's not a new movement, it's a new variation of the movement that I'm used to. But I'm still making sure that I get that stability component by holding on to something. Because if I were just out in space, I feel like I wouldn't be able to really key into each and every rep like I can by gripping this rack right here, this cable machine. Okay. Sometimes it feels really good to lighten the load a little bit, to be honest. Sometimes it's kind of needed. All right, guys, with that, this is going to conclude week 5, day 3. All that I have left is 3 sets of the hanging leg raises, which I'm just going to crank out right now, and then 3 sets of the machine crunches with the machine seated chest supported lateral raises. I'm sure you guys have seen that machine. It's pretty standard in most gyms that I've been to anyway. So if you want to complete the program with me, do some hanging leg raises, do some sort of crunch, then do some sort of lateral raise. You don't have to do machines like I'm going to be doing, but try and do something with a low stimulus to fatigue ratio. So something that's not going to beat your body up too much, because I'm just trying to get some extra frequency with the abs and shoulders. That's all that that's really for. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. This is my conclusion for today, and see you tomorrow for week 5, day 4. Have a good one. Bye.